90% of the world will try to pull you back into the herd. But to build a billion-dollar legacy, you have to become an unstoppable force. Today, I'm sitting down with the man, the myth, and the legend, John Hewitt. He's the only person in history to build two separate top 100 franchise systems from the ground up. We're going behind the scenes to discuss the grit of the Hard Knocks Academy, the 10 most important words in business, and the mirror moment that separates the grinders from the true empire builders. Agree to walk in your God-given purpose, but the process feels slower or more hidden than you expected? You're not alone. This is the Jesse Wood Show, where we give voice to the real process behind God-designed purpose. I created this space for faith-driven builders like you to help you recognize the importance of the season that God has you in and what He's doing in you during it, because what He builds in you matters just as much as what He builds through you. I'm Jesse Wood. Welcome to the podcast, and let's build together. John Hewitt, such an honor to have you on the podcast. Here, we talk about the real process behind walking into God-ordained purpose. And, we're just kind of getting to know each other. I have no idea most of your story. All I know is that you have a pretty incredible claim to fame as being the founder of Jackson Hewitt, founder of Liberty Tax Service. You're the only person in history to build two separate top 100 franchise systems. And you're also a lover of Jesus. You're a child of God, just like myself. And so I'm so excited for the listeners and the viewers to hear about your story, get some behind the scenes with the man, the myth, the legend. There is the first step in my builder blueprint is called become aware. And John, most people see your success probably as a series of smart business moves. Usually when you're successful, people say, oh, they just got lucky. But in my book, one thing I talk about God brought me awareness to was the American delusion. And by that, it's a trap of self-reliance where you can just go do it all, be it all if you just grind. And we can actually leave the Lord and step out of what He wants us to do because we're just trying to make things happen. But was there a moment early in your journey where you realized that your just talent alone and your opportunities wasn't enough to sustain the weight of the vision that God was giving you?
There's I've always been cocky, and I grew up poor, and I knew I was going to be wealthy, and it used to be cocky, but now that I've achieved it, it's changed into confidence. But I've always been blessed, and there was a book written by Kathy Lee Gifford, and in there she talks about the age of bliss, and in life, everyone gets knocked down when they get to be about 7, 8, 9 years old. Before that, you think you can do anything, and then everyone beats you down. Your parents, your siblings, your enemies, your friends, your teachers. You can't be president of the United States. You can't be Superman. You can't be Batman. You can't be X-Man, whatever. And I realized that one of the differences between me and other people is they never beat me down. But on the other hand, so I'm capable of being incredibly cocky. But on the other hand, virtually every day, God humbles me. So I've learned very early that it's not about John Hewitt. It's about the God-given talent that I have. And my favorite biblical parable is the talent story. That I've continually been beaten down over the years, despite immense accomplishments.
That's incredible. So I actually relate to you as a high achiever, high performer. I think I am susceptible when people say you can't and you won't, until I got really sure that I was being obedient to what God was calling me to do. At that point, I finally started to go deaf to those voices. They stopped having as big as an impact in my life, and I kind of just turned into kind of that don't believe me, just watch. And now then you get people coming back around later, like, I always believed you'd get there. I always believed you'd go do something. Have you seen that kind of thing happen? How has your support shifted? And what would you say to people that are maybe in a season where they're not getting that belief, they're not getting that support, and you seem like you had a pretty good block. You were pretty confident. But what'd you say to people that are struggling with what God is saying to do and what maybe people around them are saying they can't do?
Well, what I've learned is um, that 90% of the people in the world will try to bring you back into the herd, will bring you back to normal. They don't want you to exceed. They say they do. They say they wish you well and they want you to achieve great things. But most people will try to hold you back and don't no, that's too risky. No, they'll discourage you from being all you can be because it doesn't fit in their comfort zone. And success is and massive success is uncomfortable. You have to go way the extra mile to succeed. It's there's nothing easy. Everything requires hard work. And my counsel to those that say they believe in God, say they have faith in God, say they trust God, if you worry, then really you're not trusting God, right? God's always there for you and he's always waiting for you. And if you worry and let others drag you down, then you're trusting in the wrong thing. In the Bible, in many ways, over and over, it says, "Trust no man." If you're listening to those naysayers, then you're not trusting in God. So you got to let go. You got to trust in God. You got to be all you can be, and you got to go for the gusto. Life's too short.
Amen to that. That's incredible advice. And I think it took me just probably too long to really get there. Especially, I grew up in a God fearing household. I grew up going to church, and one of the things that God had to help me figure out is I'm listening to, say, siblings and family members that say, um, well, you're not being smart. You're not being wise. What if I know you're praying and you think God is saying this, but what if that doesn't happen? And I started to get this realization from the Holy Spirit is that sometimes fear will disguise itself as wisdom, and it's trying to have like plan B and plan C to God's plan A. And so actually in my book I write about this and I say that plan A has to become plan all, where even the moment you think of something else, like in James, it talks about a double-minded man can't expect to receive anything from the Lord. You realize just having the idea of this not working out could actually cause the whole thing to fail. How how did you build such a resilience, even in scaling multiple businesses? I'm sure it never goes away. It just evolves. You walk into promised land problems. Now there's just bigger challenges. How have you been able to just keep a single focus on this is what I know I'm doing, this is what God said I need to do, and not just exiting out when it's good? Maybe you've made $1 million and I could quit today if I want, but God's saying, keep going, keep going. Clearly you've kept going. How have you continued to evolve that single-minded resolution no matter what's coming up to cause you to settle or quit or to go towards that fear disguised as wisdom option?
Yeah, one of the many blessings is that I'm a lifelong competitor, and I've always wanted to be number one, and always strived, gone all out to be number one. And I've noted in business, there's no school in the United States or the world on how to be a CEO of a business. And so I've been in the school of hard knocks for almost 50 years,
Wow.
studying how to be a CEO and how to build businesses. And the number one lesson that I've learned is no one gets to skate. There's no easy life. No, everyone faces adversity. Everyone has, their burdens to bear, and you are going to get knocked down. And I'm unstoppable. They got to kill me to stop me. So you have to be unstoppable. You have to be a relentless force, and you can't let adversity stop you. You have to find a different route around the problem. You have to have plan B, plan C, and so forth. When I was a kid, I learned to be a master chess player, and I think that really helped me for my future in business. That I always have, if they do that, I'm going to do this. And then if they do that, I'm going to do that. And so you always have plan A, plan B, plan C, and ready to go. But you can't ever quit. You got to keep trying. You have to use your talent.
Vision isn't permission to rush, it's an invitation to trust. Like Abraham, sometimes you're called to move without seeing the full destination. Everyone wants to build what they feel called to build, but calling often comes before visibility, like David in the field. When God gives you a vision, it's not so you can force it to happen. Like Joseph, there are seasons where the dream is clear, but the path is quiet. Before God builds something with you, He builds you, the builder. Like Moses in formation, and Nehemiah laying foundations that last. The Purpose-Driven Business Builder's Blueprint was created to help you recognize your season and build it right. Learn more at purposedrivenbuilder.com.
That competition aspect, I love that, constantly working the problem. I think that's what they have. That's kind of a phrase they have in the Navy SEALs, like just work the problem. There is no like quitting when you're out on the front line. We've already made it this far. There's no going back. We want to get everybody home. We just continue to work the problem. And I love that. Obviously, you're bringing a solutions-based mindset to the table, and you're working hard and you're doing your part. In the Builder Blueprint, the D stands for do work. And I like to say that dominion starts with do, but obviously when Adam and Eve were placed in the garden, it was a huge setup by the Lord. He even put all these trees and planned for provision, but then he gave them a task in it. And so when we're walking in partnership with God, you've got what you're doing. And what I'm hearing from you is you're going after it. We're continuing to work the problem. There's no quitting. But how have you seen God add the supernatural aspect on what you're doing? How have you seen him just unlock doors or accelerate, like mighty man math? One sends 1,000, two sends 10,000. It just starts to get exponentially good when you walk in union with the Lord. How have you seen that supernatural work, and maybe what separates you from people who aren't working with God, aren't co-laboring with God, but also are successful in their own way?
I'm not sure this qualifies for literally for the definition of supernatural. But as I began to get wealthy, I was poor. I was struggling for a bit. And sometimes when you become self-employed, you step back before you go forward. And so, I only made one deal ever where I made a deal with God. And I said, God, I'm not going to be able to tithe for a year or two or some short period of time. But when I do, I will catch up. I will give way more than 10% of a lot larger income as I get through this period. And as I got through that period and began to give, I hadn't realized it so obviously, but the more you give, the more you receive. And God tells Mordecai, I think it's Mordecai, he says, I challenge you to try to outgive me. So the biggest supernatural, or the biggest lesson I ever learned from God, is you can't outgive God. Now, when I give, if I give to you, you're not the one that repays me. It comes from some other person. It almost never comes from the person that you're giving to. I think the biggest lesson I ever learned is that God is so bountiful in rewarding you for giving. You cannot outgive God.
Amen. And that clearly leveraging that, you're in the marketplace, you're a marketplace man, and understanding the kingdom of God that way, that's just the makings of a good investment in it, isn't it? That you get back more than what you put in. And so it's an amazing supernatural principle, and I love how your brain works. You're so around systems, and this is what I got to go do. I'm gonna go make it happen. You're locking it in, and you're looking at the Bible just as much as you would look at economics and just the facts. Supply and demand. It's like, hey, it just makes sense, and say, all right, God, we're gonna go invest. And as it starts to flow, we're going to do this. And then clearly you're a man of your word as well. I think so many people, they allow the situation to determine their commitment level or their activity. And something we say in entrepreneurship a lot is that inconsistent results come from inconsistent activity. And so you can't really focus on the results, you just focus on the activity. And for me to really honestly do that well, John, I've had to go, all right, God, just tell me what my job is. And I just show up every day. Don't worry about tomorrow, for today has enough worries of its own. Matthew 6:34. And so that's giving me the ability to just focus on my activity. And like you said, often where you give is not where that money comes from. And I've seen supernatural stuff come that way. But as someone who helps other people scale and build and invest, how are you mentoring new entrepreneurs or new franchise starters to try to build that level of resolve and understanding like you have, while they're just doing the work and they're investing before they start seeing their first 5-figure, 6-figure payday, or really even start seeing the returns on these investments? How are you stabilizing them mentally? Is there a spiritual aspect to it, or how are you going about that with those that you're mentoring?
Well, speaking of that, I brought in almost 6,000 franchisees in my 57-year career. So I've changed, and they had hundreds of thousands of employees. I've changed tens of thousands of people's lives. The key is developing systemic solutions for problems. And my job is to give my franchisees the best system on the planet. And I've been doing that for 57 years. So if I do my job, what's your job? Your job is to follow that system. So I'm continually giving them advice on following the system. When they wander away from the path, tell them to get back on the path. Now, having said that, to me, my franchisees are like children, and I have 6 children and 11 grandchildren and 5 great grandchildren, but they're like children, and out of the almost 6,000 franchisees that I brought in, no one listens 100%. So I'm constantly scolding them, begging them, berating them, asking them, advising them to get back on the path and follow the recipe. And you don't have to invent. This is the system that works in Alabama, and it works in California, and it works in Hawaii. It works coast to coast. It's like McDonald's. If McDonald's said, cook the French fries 57 seconds, why would you cook them 59 seconds? I mean, they know what they're doing, but again, no one has listened 100%. If you have children, you understand. Even if you don't have children, you've been a child, and just people don't listen. I mean, what's the first story where someone didn't listen? Adam and Eve. You're not going to listen to God, or are you going to listen to John Hewitt? So no, my constant challenge each and every day is to continue to spread the message. Here's the system. Follow the recipe. Do not modify. Do not change. Uh, get on the yellow brick road and follow the program.
I so resonate with that. Nowhere near your level, but I'm an independent financial brokerage owner. And just like you're saying, I got agents all over the country and they're like children. And we've got all the steps, we've got scripts, we've got presentations, everything. And one thing, if it ever looks like people's results are going down and we're having a strategy, chances are they got off the script somewhere. They're trying to reinvent something. They're cutting corners or they're talking too much at different stages. And so I so resonate with you on that there, John. And I am fortunate that inside of our financial industry, we are very faith forward and faith focused. So I'm able to bring the full faith and supernatural conversation in, even when I'm coaching somebody. Hey, remember, we need to stay aligned with what we know, how we know this thing is going to move forward. But the chief alignment thing in the kingdom is Jesus, because the word says that Jesus is the cornerstone, Christ the cornerstone. And we both know in building to for God to really build something, he first has to get you aligned with that cornerstone, and then we can start stacking on top of that. I'm curious, in those 6,000 franchisees that you created in the world that you have, I'm not sure how open and upfront you can be with your faith when you're trying to get those children, business builders, to get their act together. But how do you ensure that the cornerstone of your values stays squared up as you scale, and incorporate that, maybe for the listeners and the viewers that aren't able to be so faith forward, but still need to encourage and mentor and correct and do all of those things with the people that they're leading?
Yeah, it's very, very difficult. And I was in church 35 years ago, and the minister said every one of us sins every day. And that was one of my favorite sermons, but it surprised me. I get I do, but he's admitting he does. It didn't occur to me till many months later, that I was driving down the street and I realized that I had an epiphany that, wait a minute, if you're not going to follow God's 10 commandments, if you're going to sin every day, then I was with Jackson Hewitt then. I said, you're not going to listen to John Hewitt. If you're not going to listen to God, you're not going to listen to John Hewitt. And we have these principles, these top 10 principles that, I always do in top 10s, like the 10 commandments. So we had 10 principles. I said, my people are violating those principles every day. And so I set out a method for guiding people on principles. And so we had at Jackson Hewitt, we had pads of paper that had the 10 principles on them. And at the top was a place, fill in the blank, their name. And at the bottom was explain whether they met the principle or didn't meet the principle, and check which one or ones they didn't meet or did meet. And so I realized that it's the culture of following principles that sets you apart, that makes you a great company. Here's an easy example and I believe that principles trump policies. That every company has their silly policies, but principles are more meaningful than policy. And one of our principles is happy, successful franchisees. And we had a rule at Jackson Hewitt. I let the CFO mistakenly have a rule that the franchisees could only talk to his staff between 2 and 4 p.m. And so one of his staff, low-level clerk, gets a call at 4:20 from a franchisee and somehow got through the switchboard. And she hung up on the franchisee, said, I can't talk to you, it's after 4 o'clock, and hung up the phone. And so someone filled out a piece of paper with their name on it, and you violated happy, successful franchisee. Now, the CFO was livid, but you have to have principles, and you have to try your best to live up to the principle, knowing you're never gonna be 100%. It's a constant battle to live up to your principles.
Man, I think you just summed up probably 99.9% of the reasons why entrepreneurs fail. Number one, if you're out here just starting on your own independently, you're responsible for creating your own principles. And then are you going to stick to them? And one of the things I run into people is, one principle we're going to have is just block things off on the calendar, and then they actually stick to the calendar and get the things done. So you're literally dropping gold right now. And my last question I have for you, that when I started building my financial brokerage, I was about 3.5 months in and starting to see things work. I'm like, wow, God, he's really connected me to the thing that's for me. I'm starting to see early success. I was at my first event in Nashville. People were speaking, and they're all successful, broker owners. And I was getting so overwhelmed by the opportunity that I realized for the first time, John, that the only thing that's really going to get in my way now and walking into what God's calling me to do is myself. And I actually walked into the men's bathroom. Nobody was in there. I was by myself. And I kind of had this moment with the Lord, and I stared myself in the face and I said, you know what? I promise that I'm not going to get in my own way. And just a little over a year later, I was a full broker owner, had broke some records, seeing some really cool stuff go on. And it was faith, but it was also a heck ton of work and a lot of sticking to principles like that. But for those out there trying to face themselves in the mirror right now and decide, like, we're really going to do this thing, stick to the principles, stick to the plan. Did you ever have a moment where you realized you kind of had to fire the old version of yourself and go, you know what, John, we gotta lock in. We gotta do something different. We gotta really take this thing serious. You ever had a moment like that?
Well, first of all, the 10 most important two-letter words are, if it is to be, it is up to me. So you had that epiphany, in many years ago. But secondly, that happens to me all the time. I've grown. I've been so blessed. I built $1 billion company and a $500 million company, and now I'm on my way to my second $1 billion company. And in the history of the United States, there's only about 8,000 people that have founded $1 billion companies, and I'm on my way to my second one. So I've been incredibly blessed, but exponential growth is uncomfortable. So it isn't just occasionally that I have to reinvent myself or to improve. I'm on a constant state of improvement. And I believe, and I read this 35 years ago, that if you're not improving, your competitor's gaining on you. So I'm fanatically committed to win. To win, I'm fanatically committed to have the best system. And to have the best system, I'm fanatically committed to improvement. So I'm constantly improving, and boy, it's uncomfortable. And I had a retreat with my staff, my entire management staff, 30 people last week, and I said that you all annoy me because none of you have reached your potential. All of you are capable. I mean, raise your hand if you've accomplished everything that you're capable of, that you're the God-given talent to do. I said, and I'm most annoyed at myself because I haven't reached my potential. So you all annoy me, and I'm going to make you uncomfortable. I'm going to challenge you to be all that you can be. And it's my job to make you uncomfortable. And it's not my job to be liked. And so I don't just have an occasional aha moment where I have to improve. I'm improving continually.
Such a gold mine of an episode. John, thank you so much for your time. It always goes way too fast. For the listener out there, you're not alone. We're building with you. Take yourself seriously. You've been tuning into the Jesse Wood Show with John Hewitt and yours truly, Jesse Wood. Let's build together.